All right, we are live. My name is Vaibhavv Ali, and this is Aura8. And 7 days ago on this show, the godfather of crypto gave you a number. He said 62,000 is a trapdoor. Below 62,000, it could go to 60, breach 60, and it's open its doors to even 58. And now we are below that price. Then when you start looking at new lows, as I speak about, the Bitcoin is at $62,582 as we speak. We are standing on the trap door. This is exactly what was quoted by our guest, our partner for this live stream, Michael Terpin. You are a genius. You are calling out
Just following the
everything,
math.
all in the math. I need to confess this. In I think during one of our first streams, I said that somebody who can predict the market is either a god or a con man, and you are clearly the god here because everything that you have suggested, everything that you have perhaps hinted, is absolutely come true, and this show is the absolute witness to it. We are a testament to it because 7 days ago you said this 62,000 is perhaps where we're going to be, and this is where we are. A lot of things have happened in the last week. uh, but let me find out from you, where do we stand right now? Do you think that we are going to go lower than 62,000? Are we going to fall through it, or this is the hold?
Well, I think we're going to be going sideways for a while until there's some kind of momentum on either the positive or the negative side. And I think right now most of the indications are that there's more likely, bad news in the next 2 months than good news. We'll find out a little bit on the economic macro side. We had sort of like ho hum news on, inflation. It wasn't, strong or weak enough to really change the direction of the markets overall. And then we'll see what the sentiment is at Jackson Hole next week, and I will be there for the SALT conference, and then I guess they do the Fed meetings right after that.
And I must ask you this. Last week you told me we are very early in August, and you wouldn't say whether you're still short or long. We are halfway through this month. Are you still short right now, as of today?
Yeah, we have a few short positions. I mean, these are ones that were previously established.
Okay. And you said the 30s are the lowest we can go, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, never say no matter what, because I mean, obviously, if I mean, what are the things that could bring us even lower than that? I mean, you saw what happened with the cold card. Imagine if that happened to Trezor, right?
Right.
I don't think it is going to, but if all of a sudden Trezor or Ledger had an exploit that just drained, billions of dollars quickly, I think that would be a fundamental, shock worse than FTX, and we could get down to, maybe even the 20s. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that both of those teams are really solid, and they've obviously been like going and looking to see if they needed to put any kind of update out that's cautionary, and if anything, they put out things saying no, this would not happen with us because of X, Y, and Z. So so I think that there are things that AI could do that would cause a market drop that would have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Like, say, there's a big Ethereum contract that like drained a few $1 billion. That would have an effect on the entire crypto markets, including Bitcoin, because maybe people had Bitcoin as collateral to go long on one of these DeFi exchanges. But DeFi in general is getting less popular because of it, and that's been hurting the bull case for Ethereum. I mean, look, everybody's in a bear market right now, and the kind of short seller narrative is that everyone's given up on Bitcoin. It's no longer interesting. It's underperformed the stock market. It's underperformed gold in the last year. Well, of course, it's a bear market. It always underperforms that one year, and then it outperforms the 3 years after. So far, every single 4 year cycle. And I'm the one of the lone voice in the wilderness saying that this is not the end of Bitcoin. This is a good time to buy even now. because worst case scenario, top of the 29 bubble is going to be in maybe 180,000, which is almost three times what we are now. But no rush on getting in. You'll be able to get in somewhere near this price next week, the week after, the week after. I still think we're gonna kind of not turn around until October, and whether we turn around on just the end of the flat going up and the real bottom was in June, which is certainly a possibility, or if we have one more leg down, which could be only a little bit, 55, 53. So I think it's probably the most likely. Or we have a shock that's big enough that it cascades us into the 40s. And it depends what that shock is, and we don't know what that shock would be. We had yesterday Morgan Stanley going and saying they're once again going to look at delisting MicroStrategy. That caused a lot of panic when they first announced it, and then they decided to hold off. Well, it's going to be more damaging if they do it at the bottom of the market. Maybe they were like saying, "Oh yeah, well we'll put the FUD out there and let's hold off until it's right at the bottom, and that'll be the last straw for MicroStrategy believers." Obviously, wouldn't kill MicroStrategy if index funds were forced to sell. And again, it's only a single index fund, the Morgan Stanley one. It wouldn't kick it off of any other indexes automatically, but of course, the short sellers will tell you, well, it's a domino effect, and if they delist it, everyone's going to delist it, and then no one's going to want to buy it, and it's going to go to zero. Obviously, nothing's going to go to zero. It's got 850,000 Bitcoin in it, but I mean, MicroStrategy, just like Ethereum, tends to go lower than Bitcoin in the bear markets and go higher in the bull markets. And with MicroStrategy, with strategy rather now, that's sort of built into the business model because they're leveraged. So if they're succeeding, they get higher returns, and if they're not succeeding, they get lower ones.
Here's what I can't square. The job market contracted what minus 23,000. The inflation cooled down to 3.4. The hike or fell. Every one of those should have been a bid, but Bitcoin fell anyways. What broke?
Well, I don't think those were tremendously important to the thesis right now. I mean, those people who wanted to sell on macro did so a long time ago. So the only marginal sellers right now are either day traders or ones who are just waiting for one last reason to give up or one last reason to buy. And usually the last leg of retail is looking for one last reason to panic because the buyers are already actually starting. If you look at the net whale positions, they've already been buying. And this is historically something that happened 4 years ago and 4 years before that. They tend to not want to wait for the absolute bottom, and they're just doing the math and saying, we're no worse than 20% for the bottom, and we don't know that it's going to go lower. We need to load up and reload in many cases because they sold near the top. If you're a whale and you sold 1,000 Bitcoin out of your 5,000, or you sold 4,000 out of your 5,000, and you're not out of Bitcoin, but you sold it at 120, anywhere in our 60 means you get 2 for 1 back, or you keep the cash that you cashed out and replenish what you had before, or something in between. You keep 25% of the cash, which still would be substantial, and increase your Bitcoin holdings by 50%. It's the way of the
Well,
whale. And
true.
institutions are learning how to do that too.
Clearly. You have repeatedly told us on this show that every shock cycle has been a macro, not crypto. The macro has
No, no,
just
no, no.
turned.
It's every 4 year cycle has had macro shocks, but they've also had crypto shocks. 4 years ago, FTX was a crypto shock. 4 years before that, the macro shocks took us down to where we were kind of flat at about 6,000, and then Craig Wright said he's going to kill Bitcoin, and it took us down to like three. We in 2022, most of them were we had the macro shocks were high inflation and Biden's war on crypto, but that only took us down from like 60s to like 30s. It was Celsius and then FTX that took us all the way down to 15.
Got it.
And so we have
And
not had that level of crypto shock.
okay, so the 50% tariffs on Canada hit tomorrow. Did you stock up on the wine that you love from Canada?
I
You
sure
call the
did.
tariffs a drag
I sure did. I came back with
uncertainty.
I came back with I think 110 bottles, and the current duty is only 4 cents a bottle. They didn't even bother with it at the border, but it's going to
Wow.
then go for on Monday. It'll be 50% of the value. So if I have $100 bottle, it's going to be $150. So that's why I stocked up. I got 2 years worth instead of usually I'll get about 1 year's worth.
So is this
I
tariff
mean, every year.
regime? I need to taste that. So once I'm in US or in Puerto Rico, please share a glass with me. And the what do you like? Does this mean the problem for crypto is now getting even more like in the wrong place in the wrong time because uh, the macro hits that we have got throughout that has lowered the price is not really a crypto hit, but it's a macro hit. So have
Again,
we been in the wrong place in the
I
wrong
don't
time?
I see more likelihood of a crypto hit happening in the next couple of weeks than a macro hit. The macro hit might be the stock market, which always has issues in September and October most years. Perhaps people selling that and then deciding they want out of their Bitcoin positions as well, or be looking at it going down and shorting Bitcoin. Which again, if they short too heavily too long, they it turns into a short squeeze, and sometimes that's when things turn around and it's the end of the bear and the start of the winter. Because again, you don't have a quick recovery from the capitulation event.
True, true. And the selling that strategy did about 1,600 odd, like the fifth
They were not
sale
punished for
was
that
there.
simply because they explained it pretty well, and I think they buffered the market by doing that initial 32 Bitcoin sell. And they said, "Hey, we're." I don't know if you saw, but Sailor did a kind of almost like a rap song to accompany his earnings, where he basically put to lyrics what his strategy was in doing this, and it's very funny. I mean, he had his whole board and kind of like going like this, and he's rapping basically about I'm going to paraphrase here. He's like I'm yo yo I'm gonna sell one Bitcoin and then buy 10. The market wants me to buy 11, and that's hallucinating, but and not sell any. But no, I mean, for the most part, he's pivoted from never sell Bitcoin, which was never the truth because he sold some Bitcoin in 2022. I have told him, in person on a couple of occasions that if you're going to sell Bitcoin, you should sell at the top. But I guess his position is kind of that if he does it, that's going to pop the bubble as it is, but somebody's got to pop the bubble, and he'll be blamed for it. But then he's blamed for selling at the bottom too. So if he sells any Bitcoin, he'll get blamed. And his current model, he kind of either has to sell some Bitcoin or he has to go and kind of let his debt go a little bit higher than some analysts would like. And so these are the difficult decisions he has to make. And so far, I'd say he's been navigating it pretty well. You'll note that what he's been spending money on lately has been buying back STRC, and it got up almost to $96 this last week. It's around 95 ish right now. Well, that's quite a recovery from when it was. You remember a few weeks ago, I said buy. It's 75. It was 75 for about a week. It's free money. You're getting
I was
60%
my
interest.
next question was exactly on that, but you have answered that. True. You called it on the show that STRC is at 75. Buy is
No,
what you exactly said. And
it was a better buy than Bitcoin at that price. I mean, because you're getting 16%, and then when it goes up to 100, which it will, it's already almost there. You could sell it for a 25% gain, and then buy Bitcoin.
true. Trump media lost about 360 million on digital assets in 6 months. Miners added 1.7 8 billion on of selling.
So again,
At what point?
that's not apples to apples because when you're talking about the Trump losses, those are paper losses. They didn't go rage quit. They didn't sell those assets. That's just counting the book value, which means that the price of Bitcoin went down from their American Bitcoin and other things. Obviously, a lot of it was the Trump coin. That means that it's bear market and for Bitcoin, certainly we know it's going to go up and will be a gain in future quarters. Trump coin, we'll see. I mean, the issue always with the Trump coin was, what's the value of it after he's out of office?
You said flatly it would not be voted on the show about the Clarity Act. Is the Clarity Act dead? Because,
I'd say
I would love to know from you.
I personally think it's dead as it stands. I think that I think they got one last shot to jam it through, but because they have to get 60 votes instead of it would already be passed if they only had to get 50 votes tie plus JD Vance breaking the tie. Like a lot of legislation only needs 50, and other legislation needs 60 because it could be filibustered. I've never quite understood the reason for that. I mean, you don't have that in the House.
And you said Trump agreed to the ethics rule, and the Democrats moved the goalpost to wake fraud protection.
That's
If the bill
exactly what they did.
dies, yes. So if the bill dies, three Democratic women would write the next one. Which is worst for this industry, no bill or their bill?
Oh, well, their bill was never going to get passed. Brian Armstrong basically said no bill is better than the one that basically makes DeFi illegal and self custody illegal and just nonsense. So no, I mean I think the Democrats and I think the Republicans have compromised quite a bit, and the Democrats are in a take no prisoners mode because they're just using it as argument points during the midterms. I mean, they decided to go full on Democratic Socialist, and if you're looking right now, this week for the first time, AOC is now the leading contender on Polymarket for the Democratic presidential candidate. AOC. I mean, this is a person who has only been what 5 years ago she was waiting tables in Queens, and she became elected as a kind of junior congresswoman, and then just got a lot of Twitter followings and became sort of the spokesperson for this new wave of democratic socialists, and she's sort of like riding the tail of Mondami and some of these other socialists of the one in mayoral races, and I think that if she becomes the Democratic candidate, that the Democrats don't have much of a chance of winning. I mean, they will win the blue states though, which is kind of crazy, but they'll win California hands down. Yay, AOC! At least we have another woman minority running. That's all we really care about. And she's a socialist, so she'll lower our rent. But I think that the 7 states that basically decide the election, which are the purple states as they call them, the swing states, I don't see any of them voting for AOC over JD.
Interesting. And the SEC is writing Reg crypto anyways and just delayed its own innovation exemption. So, not to complicate the negotiation, does Congress even matter here? Or has the SEC already won by default?
No, I think the SEC for the next 2 years at least, and the CTFC are kind of providing the degree of clarity. The reason why ultimately you need to have a law as opposed to just guidance is that certain Wall Street banks aren't going to go all in if they think that it's going to all be reversed, right? They don't want to get sued if all of a sudden, they put their clients into, I don't know, Solana ETFs, and then a new version of Biden and Gary Gensler come into power under President AOC, and they're like, "Oh, Solana's a fraud, Ethereum's a fraud, it's illegal to own," and like all of a sudden, Morgan Stanley and everybody else has egg on their faces. So they want to make sure if it's a law, it's a lot harder to overturn. Whereas if it's just guidance, changes from one administration to another. I mean, you can see how quickly all of Gensler's guidance got wiped out.
Nvidia lost about 130 billion in one day on a $500 billion financing deal. Chip stocks have now shed over $1 trillion. You have said this, that the AI bubble popping is what the funds, what would fund the Bitcoin's next bull run. And the next 2029 could be everything bubble. Is this it, or
No,
we
I think
see
that
a
there's still a lot more upside in AI because if you look at most stock market bubbles, they historically happen at the end of a decade. So just like Bitcoin is 4 year cycles, stock market is 10-year cycles. Again, pretty predictable. 29 crash, 89 crash, 99 bubble pop, and a couple months later you had the Nasdaq, mega crash of 80%, and then 2009 crash, right? I mean, and then 2019 took a couple months to get to the COVID crash. So it's been fairly clockwork in terms of the end of the decade, popping the bubble of the kind of you know the end of the decade tends to be when you have your biggest bull markets in stocks, and then you have a healthy correction, or unhealthy one, depending on your point of view, at the start of that next decade. And it's been the standard, not the just like the Santa Claus rally. I mean, there's certain things are sell in May and go away. There's a number of things that just keep on happening year after year, and so you have to sort of like pay attention to them. You don't have to follow them blindly, but it's got to be part of your analysis.
You told us the situational awareness story, 200 million to 45 billion, and then sold to Citadel for 10. Is that this cycle's three arrows? And more importantly, who's next?
Well, they're not crypto though, right? So it's certainly not the three arrows because they're not crypto. They may have been a unique situation. I mean, they were just 4x up and 4x down, and it was wonderful when it worked, and then they obviously got a little bit too cocky and made a pretty risky bet going 4x long on a chip stock that then dropped 40%, and 4x short on Adobe, which went up 23%, and that they did it at such. It would have been fine if they position sized it to a small amount of the fund, but they put enough in that it literally wiped out the fund, and they got margin call like there was no tomorrow, and Citadel basically was laughing all the way to the bank, and meanwhile Jane Street, I guess, was one of their biggest shareholders, and they had to just write off 15 billion in losses.
The S&P just posted a third straight winning week and touched a record. Bitcoin is at 62. Is Bitcoin now just a worse performing, higher
No, come on.
volatility
It's
version
every
of
every
Nasdaq?
every 4 years you have Bitcoin doing worse than the S&P. Every 4 years, so you can't judge Bitcoin on its 1 year performance in a bear market. It's been any more than you can judge its average on like usually the first year of winter it goes up 100% or higher, and you can't say that that's going to be every year from here on. You have to look at the longer term, right? If you look at the last 10 years, the average of all years is let's see, where were we 10 years ago? We were at 1% of where we are today, right? 10 years ago we were around 600. Now it's 60,000. So that's 100x. So the IRR for that is 45-50%, I think, average per year. So that's pretty good. I mean, if you took it through the bubble last year, it would have been like 60-70%. So that's going to go down over time, but I'd be happy with 20% average over the next 10 years. I think that's what Saylor's been projecting. And actually, for religious reasons, he says 21% per year. But, as long as you follow my four seasons of Bitcoin thesis and you don't hold after the bubble pop, and you sell and keep cash or put in the S&P or whatever, and then buy back at the bottom, you skip those negative years, right? So if the average over the next 10 years is 20%, and that takes you from 60K now to to see what the numbers of 20% IRR, but probably close to $1 million in 10, 11 years. That would be higher if you skip the years that it goes down, right? Then you're probably at 30%.
So 210,000 Bitcoins left the long term holders' wallet, the most since December 2024. Are the OGs finally selling?
That's a very misleading statistic because if you look on a different day, they were net buying, right? I mean, if you look at for the last month, they've been net buyers, not net sellers. And again, sometimes leaving the wallet doesn't mean that they're selling. It means they just maybe moving it from cold card to a Trezor or whatever. You don't see it going if it's not shown as going into Kraken. They you can't say they're selling.
Fair. And a Bitcoin fork mined two blocks and died. Luke was removed as a BIP editor and has gone on sabbatical since. Is Bitcoin's governance actually working, or did we just watch it break in public
No,
and snap?
I think it worked perfectly. The minority position lost, and thankfully we didn't have. Look, I mean, in Ethereum, when you had the minority position losing, they actually forked and created Ethereum Classic, and that's still an existing underperforming asset to today, right? If you went with the Ethereum Classic side instead of being at like $1,900 Bitcoin, you're at, I haven't checked it recently, what, maybe $19 Ethereum Classic, right? So you lost by 100 to 1. And arguably you did the same thing with Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, right? Bitcoin was the winner there, and they're at 60, even at the bottom of the bear market, they're at 62, 63,000. Bitcoin Cash, I think, is like 400 or something. And, Bitcoin SV is barely on the radar. Almost nobody trades them. They're like 20, $30. So, the prevailing chain, this is just democracy in action on chain. I think it was only 18% of the people supported the knots. And, I just was not a big supporter of it anyway. I thought that, this whole let's keep Bitcoin pure and not process, ordinals, which were dying on their own anyway. I mean, maybe they'll come back at some point. I mean, I think anything that it's not a surprise that most of the miners voted to keep them because it's extra revenue for them. And who knows what the future is going to be? Maybe 5 years from now, there's going to be a layer two on Bitcoin that does a really safe, secure DeFi and has Tether on Bitcoin and other things. And you want to go and say we're not going to process that because of some maximalist religious reasons. I mean, let the market decide. And right now, the market has, and it decided 82 to 18 to go with the Bitcoin as it is, and the original Bitcoin. Well, quote unquote original Bitcoin. I guess
So,
there were some early changes, and Craig Wright will say that that's the original Bitcoin. But at any rate, the Bitcoin as we know it since SegWit. And that's the one that prevailed, and I think that's the one that should have prevailed. And the fact that it only got mined for 2 blocks is that there wasn't enough miner, sort of um, kind of interest to say, I'm going to put my power on this one rather than put it on Bitcoin. And I think they'd seen that mining the prior forks was not as profitable as just continuing to mine Bitcoin with all your hash power.
and need to ask you this on behalf of all my friends in ordinals. Do you hold any ordinals, any rune stones? Uh,
I have a couple of ordinals that I was gifted. I've got one that's part of my Godfather painting that I got from the artist Edson, and so I have that. That's actually that ordinal is my profile picture on
X.
Telegram and I think a few other places. I think it's on my Twitter as well, on my X account. So that is from an ordinal. It's a drag that Twitter, now X, used to let you verify that something was actually indeed an
Yeah.
NFT, and with that little hex thing. And now they don't. It's too bad because now anybody can go and just copy someone else's bored ape and act like they're an ape when they don't actually have one.
And with the Bitcoin on, sorry, art on Bitcoin theory, do you concur? Do you believe in it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said the art on Bitcoin theory that the ordinals have. Do you believe in it? Do you
Look,
think that has
it's a collectible.
potential?
It's a collectible. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't, if you have the technology, be able to go and inscribe
Inscribe it.
something on Bitcoin. It's a collectible, but it's never been a major part of the Bitcoin story. And I am out of time now. I'm getting to my brother's wedding shortly.
Okay, congratulations then. But I need to say this to everybody who's listening to us, that someone who's watching and owns a Bitcoin or a bit of Bitcoin and perhaps wants to know more about what Bitcoin is going to do, there is one thing that I'm going to suggest you this weekend. Get your hands on the Bitcoin Super Cycle. It's available on Amazon and bitcoinsupercycle.ai. So please go ahead and check it out. Thank you so much, Michael, once again for your time. And we will see you next week soon. And please give your brother every listener's regards, and may he have a very happy and a fulfilling married life.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Yep. Bye bye.